Everybody, how's it going? Today we are going to do some ratios. That's a pretty popular lesson that I like to do. So there's a lot of different angles we can take. Keep in mind that ratios are obviously a big part of quant, but as you would imagine, they're a big part of data insights as well, because certainly they show up in data sufficiency, and then they also show up in some of the graphing questions like graphics interpretation, and then also the other types of questions. For sure, you can see them in two-part analysis, and you can also see them in table analysis. So ratios can take a big chunk of your GMAT, and they don't always have to be the star in a question. They can be just a part of the question. So anyway, something to keep in mind because it's a big topic to understand. So what I want to do to start is I want to do a string of 2 data sufficiency questions that deal with trying to determine what we call a useful ratio is. And if you can pick out some kind of key components of these questions, it's very simple to get these types of questions right, sometimes without actually doing them out in full. And of course, whether or not you do a question out in full really depends on your timing within the section, right? Sometimes we have a tendency to want to do something out in a more fuller way just because we think to ourselves, well, I want to, dot my I's and cross my T's. But the problem with that is simply that you may need that time later on. So at the moment, you're pretty certain of a question. My suggestion is always to roll with your gut and keep it moving. It doesn't mean be careless, but it does mean be strategic. So anyway, give you guys a couple minutes here. Put your answer in the chat box once you have your answer, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I see a couple different answers here. Obviously, this comes down to a series situation. Now, just because I do see some C's here, I just want to give another very similar question, and then I want to circle back to this one. I think for those that put C, you're going to see, no pun intended, Y. That might not be accurate. So I want everyone to quickly run through this next question, and then we're going to circle back and talk about the differences, because they're going to seem very similar, but remember, there's some slight differences here. So everybody, take a look at this question, give it your best effort, then we'll talk about both of them. All right, so I see some answers trickling in here. For those who put C in the previous question, did you see that this problem was in fact C, and because this problem is C, the other one probably has to be E? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, I see a no. Well, we're going to go through both of them so you can see the differences. But what I want you to understand here is that the second question gives you relationships that are predicated on addition, or excuse me, and multiplication, whereas the previous question has addition, subtraction. And that changes a lot when you're dealing with a ratio itself and what actually constitutes a ratio when it's all said and done. Because what we have here is we have 4 variables. So we've got our red wine variables. So we're going to say R is obviously the dollars per case. For the red, we can call X the quantity, right, of red. And then for white, W is dollars per, Y is the quantity, right? Now, we know it's either series. We're just going to combine everything together to go through it. Ratio of red to white is just Rx over WY is equal to what, right? Statement 1, 4 times as many cases of red. That's just an equation. R is equal to, excuse me, X is equal to for y, right? Because there are 4 times as many as red. That's how you do the translation. Statement 2, here's where the addition comes in. White wine, that's W, is 50 more than red. Now, if I'm on the test, personally, I'm stopping here, or heck, I don't even know if I'm writing these out. The moment I see 50 more, I know the answer is going to be E. And you can go and back test this with other questions with like percents. I've seen in the old NBA.com exams, there's this question about a sofa and a chair. They're asking about, I think, percent change versus or percent increase in profit or something. It's the same deal. There's an addition statement and the answer ended up being E. Nonetheless, you plug in, if you want to go see it all the way through, 4y for x gives us 4yr over 50 plus w, or excuse me, that's not 50 plus w, that's each case of white wine for 50 more, so that's 50 plus r. So then we have 50 plus r times y here. Notice the y's cancel, but we're still stuck with the r's. You can't cancel out the r when you have 50 plus r here, so the answer ends up being E. That's the reason. If we now fast forward to the next question, you're going to see all these variables are going to cancel. So it's the same thing. Rx over Wy is equal to what? Statement 1, 3 times as much as each case. So sold each case for 3 times as much. So that's going to be R is equal to 3W. And remember, X is the quantity of reds. So 2 times as many cases as white as red. So that means 2X is equal to Y. When we sub this in, you do that there. You do this here. So that's going to be 3WX over 2XW. Notice, cancel, 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 cancel. 3 over 2, and you're done. So that's it. That's literally all you got to do here. So if you can recognize that you have the relationship that deals with multiplication, and they're giving you relationships for both variables, it's going to ultimately be C if you're solving for a ratio, a percent, a fraction, etc. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I want to do a couple more things here, maybe like 2 more good questions, and we can do some Q&A to the end, because there's one thing I want to teach you guys about some substituting that I think is important, and plugging in real numbers if you feel it's necessary. So take a look at this question here. All right, I see a lot of correct answers here, which I expected. Did you guys use variables here or real numbers here? All right, did anyone use real numbers? Okay, I guess you could call them smart numbers. Anyone else? Okay, a lot of variables. Now, I don't disagree that variables aren't a good way to deal with this particular one. However, as I like to tell you guys, my way of doing things as smart numbers are concerned, I've been skewing the smart number route more and more and more and more. Just because it's clear that if you're strategic with the numbers you're choosing, I think it's easier to work with real numbers when applicable, not in algebra, but in ratios, percents, etc., when the answer choices are in that format. And we're going to do one that's even harder in a minute to kind of tie a bow on this, and we'll end there. But what you're saying here is 1/2 C is 1/5 T. You're saying 1/4 sport is equal to 1/8 total. If you want to be strategic, make the total a nice clean number, make it 40, because that's the LCM of 8 and 5. That means 1/2 C is equal to 8, B is equal to 16, 1/4 S is equal to 5, S is equal to 20. We need to get C over S. That's 16 over 20, which is 4 over 5, and that's your answer. Again, it's okay if you didn't do it that way, but as these problems get a little bit more convoluted and annoying, you'll see that plugging in numbers can just help alleviate the pain. So with that in mind, I want to give you a bear of a question, and then still, you guys do it out any way you want. I'm going to show you my method with real numbers or real smart numbers. So take a look at this, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so how many people decided to go with my method and use actual values after creating the equation? Okay, I like that. And do you guys, are you now on Team Smart Number based off of what I told you guys to do? And it's okay if you're not. I'm just curious if you guys saw the simplicity in solving it using that number or using a smart number. Well, if you did tell me, because I'm curious, but I'm going to set this up. The key is obviously setting up the equations correctly. So, okay, 1/4 as many everything bagels as plain bagels. So that's 1/4 P is equal to everything. I think setting it to 1, though, isn't helpful because you're still dealing with fractions. If you're going to do it, I would do it all the way and just use a strategic number that's going to give you clean numbers. Setting it to 1, in my opinion, is the same thing as using variables. So statement 2, 5 times as many plain as raisin. So 5 raisin equals plain. And then 3 onion, of course, equals raisin. We notice P is that variable that's everywhere. So we have E in terms of P. We can get R in terms of P and just say R is equal to P over 5. And then, you know, we're good with the raisin once we get raisin. So what we can do, as somebody said, you can just make P 20. When you do that, you're doing 1/4 P to get everything. So everything ends up being 5. Raisin ends up being 4. So we have that, and then onion, of course, is equal to 4 as well, because onion equals raisin. The reason why this is so clean now, plain and raisin, that's just going to be 20 plus 4, so that's 24 over the total. 20 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4, that's going to be 25 plus 8, which is 33. 3 goes into that 8 times, and then you get 8 over 11. So that's it. Look, it's not to say that you can't use variables. If you want to use variables, I'm fine with it. I really prefer using real numbers at this point. I think it's the wisest way to deal with this question type rather. And yeah, I think you can be really successful in these in percents. Anytime you have an answer in a fraction form, a ratio form, a percent form, you can always roll with this method. All right, so that is it. Any random questions before we hop off? You can determine it because if the answer choice is in fraction form, ratio form, or percentage form, you can use smart numbers. That's how it works. Yes, this is a medium question for sure. Any other questions? Anything at all? Just practice. Like anything in life, to get faster, you practice. Simple. Any other questions before we hop off here? I used P was 20 because I needed to find a number. I didn't have to use P as 20, but it was strategic in the sense that I needed to find a number that was divisible by 4 and a number that was divisible by 5. That was the deal. So 20 was the LCM, so it made sense. Any other questions? All right, well, if that is it, how else can you phrase? I don't think there's really another way to phrase it unless, you know, you were doing percentages. There's 25% as many. I mean, that's another way, but there's no really another way that I see it being phrased. I mean, I guess you could say there are 1/4. No, as many as needed. So yeah, I don't see another phrasing. I mean, if you struggle with phrasings, just put those on flashcards and you'll learn them. All right, so if that's it, everybody, good work. We'll be back here next week. You know, if you need anything, reach out to us. Work hard, study hard, stay safe. We'll talk to everybody in a week. So thanks, everybody. Talk soon.